everybody. Right, yesterday I decided that I really needed to give my Honda a bit of a run. A couple of issues which we'll come to later, and I was testing the new GoPro Hero 11, just running around the local area really, just getting out of Tilehurst and into the countryside. The GoPro Hero 11 is mounted to the handlebars, and it bounces about a lot on the Honda, obviously, because it's rigidly mounted, and it seems to be performing quite well. The stabilisation, I think I played a bit with it, and I don't know whether the horizon lock's working or not, but I've got a maximum stabilisation. So that was the sort of say purpose of the run. That and the bike, which is I ran it for a little while, done a couple of runs, and it just wasn't quite feeling right. But that's a feature of the older bikes. Sometimes you get off one onto another and it all feels a bit odd. The gearbox still whines like Billy-O, but we're not going to delve into that unless we have to. And the selector mechanism is obviously worn to virtual destruction, I'm guessing. But that's basically what we were out for. And there was a classic car show at the local pub in a place called Aldworth, which I never actually got to, simply because, as you'll see, the rain suddenly came down, and foolishly, I'd not looked at the weather forecast. Just lately in the UK, whilst Europe burns, we've had this cloud and the occasional shower, and it's normally turned out to be a reasonable day, but it wasn't to be on this particular day. So we've running it sort of, not say aggressively, but giving it sort of a bit of a spirited run, just to sort of check that I wasn't imagining anything, and to be perfectly honest, it all seemed to be perfectly okay. So the exhaust is still proving to be a bit of a ball ache. It's just so loud, so I've got to get some packing material for that, because whilst it's good fun for 5 minutes, for the rest of the journey it's actually annoying. And it's, I say not an unpleasant noise, but it's just that because the bike's it's a 4-cylinder, quite high revving, it sounds like it's doing 1,000,000 miles an hour, and you can hear it massively when you're sat on the bike, and I'm told even if you're in front you can hear it. So not the best. I'd like to tone it down a bit, so I'm going to research where to get some exhaust packing from and start on that. So that's what we're out for. As I say, we're just out through the local lanes really, all bumpy, and there's quite a few stones in the middle of the road in some places, so a little bit of caution required, and we'll give it a run and see how we get on. So join us, where are we? Coming down Sulham Hill. Again, stones in the road here, so tippy toe. It's about this time of year, there's a reasonable amount of traffic, and this road bears a brunt of it a bit, but it seems at this time of year all the children have gone on holiday and parents have gone away, so the traffic's fairly light. It's some quite beautiful places just off the beaten track here. There's a big church on the left, but not something you get unless you're on a bicycle or walking. The local roads at the moment are somewhat, as I say, potholed due to the winter, and there's been as I say, we've had quite a lot of rain, so there's quite a lot of stones about, so you have to be a little bit sort of circumspect as you enter some of these bends. And of course you get vans, and sometimes there's a few roads being closed off in Tilehurst at the moment for road work, so to get a lot of traffic and sometimes big vans coming down this road, so you have to be a little bit cautious. The GoPro seems to be sort of handling the barrage of potholes and uneven roading really well. I'm quite impressed with it. I've no intentions of buying a media mod or anything like that. I've got a drift camera which I use on the helmet, so this is more of a supplementary thing. But what I have put on it is a foam windsock, which I'll see if I can grab a picture of. It was only a few quid from Amazon, and that really actually makes it usable. You just put that windsock on it and it takes away that dreadful wind roar that you get even if you're walking it and the wind blows. You get this sort of dreadful boom through it. So I'm quite pleased with that. That's quite a good investment, as they say, and we'll see how that runs as the time goes on. Joining the Tidmarsh Road here, this road which links a place called Thiel to Pangbourne, and it's got a lot of speed limits on it, but it gets a bit quicker as we cross the M4 in a moment. I say the Honda is, the gear changes are good. I say I don't know whether they're getting worse or better, it's not quite difficult to say, but certainly I think the Selector's quite well worn, as I said. So there's a bit of a knack to changing gear, and if you don't think about it, it sort of clunks quite aggressively. I've noticed really strangely, a very strange sort of feature, if you like, is when you're changing down, don't blip the throttle, just pull the clutch in, change down, then blip the throttle. If you blip the throttle, it almost like crunches the gears. So synchromesh, I don't know, whatever. Again, changing up, you need to change up. If you take your time with it, as you would expect to do on, let's say, a British bike or any normal older bike, it seems to fight back. But if you you can actually quite easily just shut the throttle and change gear without the clutch very easily on this, which seems odd for an old bike. But as I say, if you snatch the clutch in quite quick and aggressively snatch it up, it changes gear quite perfectly. Not perfect, but much better. So that all indicates that the gearbox has got some significant wear in it. Probably the selector forks are bent and buggered. But as I say, to get all that lot out means engine out and a whole world of pain. I haven't really got the space to do it again. I have had the engine out of this twice, maybe 3 times, I can't remember. Each time it's a soul-destroying operation involving winches from the garage rafters and all sorts of swearing and cursing, because it seems to have a size 10 engine in a size 9 frame. But if we have to, and we'll get it out and do it again. So here we are, whizzing up more of the sort of country lanes now, through the back of really what is Englefield Estate, owned by Lord Benyon, I believe his name is. Very wealthy man, big estate in Scotland, I'm told, and some acquaintances of mine actually have cottages and work on the estate. But that's a different world, it seems, from 2 miles down the road where I live, in urban Reading. It's almost like they're in a different world. But it's convenient for us because we can just whiz down the road and be in some reasonable countryside in no short space of time. So let's see here, we've got a little bit of rain coming, and this is when I first sort of realised that actually this might not have been the brightest idea to have an open face helmet and jeans and just a leather jacket on. But you get to a point where you think, oh, it will just blow over, which of course it didn't. On the other subject of the bike, the other thing that slightly perplexed me is it's not a bike, obviously an older bike, you don't rev it out that much, you don't sort of ride it like you would when you were a youngster. But I did notice that it didn't seem to ever sort of go above 6,500 RPM, and that's about as much as you'd ever really use it, real terms, normally. But on this occasion I thought, well, is it my imagination, or is that just, is the engine holding? Well, it turns out sort of through, and you'll probably hear it at some point in time during this ride, give it some sort of, give it the beans, and the rev count will go around to sort of 6.5 and stop there, but a bike keeps pulling, and it definitely is the rev counter issue. So I a couple of times on the way back I gave it sort of a good rev as I was coming sort of, say down through gears, clutch in, sort of give it the full sort of throttle revs, and it hesitated, the rev counter hesitates at 6.5, but it did actually ping past it, so I'm guessing it's completely gunked up. For whatever reason it's not indicating past 6.5 unless it's under real duress. So I've got to work out how to take the rev counter apart, which would be fun. I did have the original clocks and I've lost them. I'll say lost them, I don't know what I've done with them, but they're certainly not here. I've turned the place upside down. So I'd much rather have taken the original clock apart and learnt how to do it, because that's the Honda clock. These are pattern ones, which I'm not going to say rubbish, but yeah, they are what they are. They're probably, Chinese made, where they were probably 140 quid. If you bought real ones, if you could buy such things, they'd probably be twice that, if not more. But that's not really a great issue, because I'm never really going to run it through to such high revolutions in normal use. I don't ever really rag it, as this is probably the most aggressive riding it's had during this sort of spate. But it will be what it will be. If we can take it apart, we will. If not, I think a new rev counter, pattern rev counter, is probably 70 quid or something. So we'll pull our way through that and see what we can find out. But that's where we are with it.
Well, I think we're going to abort this and go home, because the weather forecast of the map is looking like it's just going to keep on raining. So we're going to hitch this up and go home. It'll be a test of the GoPro, but before our bike's gotten wet, it never gets wet. I'll have to bloody do something about it now. Hello.
Well, that was our point of giving up, and we had to turn our sorry selves to home. The rain really just started coming down with a vengeance, let's say. As I said before, this bike's not been out in the rain for, I don't know, I can't remember last time I rode it in the rain. And suddenly I was on tyres that are probably a little bit over, they're probably sort of 5-7 years old. So, but yeah, it's fine. It's quite, it was quite okay in the rain. It behaved itself. Obviously you take these things steady anyway, because the brakes are always a bit circumspect. Solid discs tend to have a reputation for not slowing down in the wet, but it seemed to work fine, to be perfectly honest. Didn't give me any issues at all. Strangely, as I got further back in towards home, it seemed a little bit drier, so that was no problem at all. So it was, I say, enjoyable. I had to hang the jeans up to dry and give the bike a squirt over with, I used something called Scott Oiler FS365, I think it's called, which I've thought about using ACF50, but to be honest, that's obviously a very more, if you tend to clean your bike a lot and keep on top of it, I don't see the need of ACF50. I don't drive them in all weathers, so if they do get covered in salt, that's a bit of a drama. If I were riding the Triumph more in the winter, I would consider something more all-encompassing, such as the ACF50, but the Scott Oiler stuff is just spraying a water-based oily substance on it, just to keep the worst of it off. But that seems to work. The wheels on this particular bike are shot anyway. They really need renewing, rims, chroming, new spokes, and the whole thing could be done. But again, it's not a show bike, and if you do things like that, it means you have to sort of maintain it with a bit of a passion. And this one tends to be more of a rough and ready working bike, as I call it. So I'm not too perplexed about that. But generally though, as a test, the camera I'm pleased with. So it's not the best light for it, of course, but it seemed to work fine, so I could supplement, if I'm going away on a trip, I could sort of keep that on a chest harness or a clip on the bike, wherever, and use it in conjunction with the other camera. I'm not a great cameraman, so I don't really pretend to sort of keep any great record of trips, but it's just for fun, really. So that's where it is. So tomorrow we're off to see if we can find some exhaust packing from our local motorcycle shop. I think he should have some, because he does a lot of sort of off-road stuff, and I'm guessing he'll be the sort of person to get it from. I think if you look on eBay and places like that, it all gets very confusing because you get all sorts of things. So I'm going to whiz down there and get some of that. I shan't embark on the rev counter anytime too soon. Maybe at winter, when I start not using it so much, I'll get it off, or I could just take it off, to be perfectly honest. It's not going to be a great issue, but it's one of those things you just need to check. The bike is actually coming up for its... I tend to service this one sort of every 2 or 3 years, or 1,000 miles. In this case, it's probably 3 years. It's done 1,000 miles in 3 years, I think. So it doesn't, as you can see, get a lot of use. So she's due for a service, and at that point I'm going to be checking obviously all the usual suspects: timing chain tensioner, valve clearances. The carbs should be all in balance. They're not going to go out of balance, so I balance those, but I might just check them again. I know that the carbs have, there's a couple of things on the carbs that really need sorting. Not to say it doesn't run fine, but the carb rubbers that attach to the engine are like rock, so they're not a lot of good. They could do with replacing, but it's a fair whack of money every time we do these things. But more importantly, on number 2 cylinder, we've got a slide that is absolutely messy. It really looks like it's been got at in a big way, and I've had to, believe it or not, I had to sort of hammer it into a circle again because it was sticking, and that's not easy to do and not something I recommend. But it's all a bit messy. The number 2 slide is a bit messy, so I may take the carbs off and do that whole malarkey and give them all a good clean. But again, a carb slide is probably going to be 100 diddly-dot pounds, so it's no mean sort of feat. Here you see we're giving it a little bit of the beans, sort of wound it up to 80 and then slackened it off as we come to the brow of the hill, but it seemed to be pulling clean and happy, with no problem at all. So I was quite, at this point, quite happy with the performance, and it did definitely seem to be the rev counter, because I think just previously there I'd knocked it down into 4th and opened it up, and it just goes straight to 6.5, and the needle stops, the bike keeps pulling. So yeah, it's a rev counter issue, so that's going to be I don't know whether to get involved in taking it apart. I probably will, because buying another one is a ball ache, and it probably won't match the one that's on the Speedo. So if you can fix it, all well and good. Might just be a case of squirting it with something, but I'll have a go. At this point, you can see we're well on our way home, and it's now proper rain, and yeah, just a case of getting home before your legs completely soaking wet, which is where the discomfort starts, really. Strangely, I didn't feel it in the hands. I only had some of my mesh gloves on, but that didn't seem to be an issue. And again, through these little lanes, they're only little lanes, but of course they're national speed limits, so you can sort of wang it along a bit and sort of try and open it up. And on a couple of occasions I sort of did. It's strange, this bike. It's obviously, I think they're rated when they were new at 69 brake horsepower, and it sort of winds up. It's not got the sort of bite of a modern bike, but you sort of open the throttle and think, that pulls well, and then you actually get to a point where it's sort of like, holy crap, that starts to sort of really wind up and whistle along at an alarming pace. when you consider the suspension and the brakes. But of course, back in the day, they were state-of-the-art suspension and brakes, and allowing for wear and tear. And of course, the engine won't have 69 brake horsepower now. I'm sure it won't. But even so, it can be alarmingly quick. And I think at this point here, I think it was first or second gear, but it sort of like probably let it rip and then giving it a couple of real good twists of the throttle just to see, you know, is it my imagination? And definitely no, it definitely sort of breaks past the 6.5 point when you sort of rev it. So, but it definitely hesitates there. It's almost like if it were an engine, you'd say it's really hesitating, but the rev counter itself. So that was it. And back and this is where the bike does not excel. Potholed bloody road and doing that sort of circular turn is always a bit of a task, but that's it. We're back home and we're going to put it away and squirt it with some oil. So till the next time, when we've got something to say, we will be out on probably another bike soon, and there's a trip coming up, I think to Wales, which we'll be taking the Triumph on. So we'll hopefully see you soon.